Well, welcome to another episode of Faith-Driven Leadership. I'm so excited to have you all with me here today. And today my guest is Nathan Thompson. Nathan, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's great to have you with us. And I'll just say to everybody, Nathan is a friend, co-worker, and also a fellow coach at Faith-Driven Leadership. And so I'm excited to learn more about you, learn about your story, leadership, background, and not interrogate you, but get some good information out of you today. That'll be helpful for everyone. So let's just start off with just a quick summary. Tell us a little bit about you and your story. What led you to where you are today?
Perfect. Well, thank you again for having me.
Yeah.
A pleasure to kind of talk about leadership and what we do at Faith-Driven Leadership. A little bit about myself. Started my career in retail. Did about 10 years of grueling retail. Really learned a lot of the core skills of communication, leadership, team management, recruiting, conflict resolution, I think was the biggest one.
I'm sure you had a little bit of conflict resolution.
Just a little bit, yeah. Black Friday, holiday season can be a test at times. So actually ended up getting my insurance license at one point and stepped away from retail for a little bit. Office I was working for ended up closing pretty shortly after, went back to retail, and that's where I started my HR journey. So started my HR kind of career in the retail space. Retail space is kind of odd when it comes to HR because everyone in that building, if you're a manager, handles HR issues, at some capacity, right? The only real big difference is payroll. Okay. So left retail and actually went to a software company and a software implementation company, was the HR director there. And that's where I gained a lot of the current skills that I have now. Business admin, large amount of employees that I was responsible for from an HR standpoint, payroll on a much larger scale than I had been, exposed to in the past. Multi-state compliance. Wow. So then I joined Music Serving the Word Ministries back in October as their HR director, and that's where I'm at currently. And then, looking to help other HR leaders and in the coaching space where I don't think, from my perspective, I had never seen an opportunity to reach out to someone from an HR perspective that also believes what I believe, when it comes to my faith. So that's a little bit about myself and where I'm at today and the career, path that I had, which is unique, but wouldn't have it any other way.
Yeah, that's awesome. No, thank you for sharing that. I appreciate that one thing led to another. Seems the common thread maybe is people.
Yes.
I think that is the, so retail, I've never worked in retail. I hear good and not so good things about retail. It's a love-hate relationship, it seems, which is kind of because of people, customers, and then also HR is the same, right? It's a love-hate relationship. So I'm curious, looking back at that, your love for helping people in HR, what really shaped that? What do you think was the dynamic? Is it your love for people? Is it you saw problems and you like to solve it? What was there a unique part that kind of drew you into the mindset shift of how do I lead well, not just from a retail, but from a personnel perspective?
Yeah, it's actually interesting. So retail was my first job. I was a holiday hire at JCPenney when I got there. Had no intention of, I think, staying there long term. Luckily, I was in a pretty fortunate position that I rose through the progression pretty quickly over the course of probably a year and a half, where seasonal hire, then was retained as a regular associate, then got promoted to a assistant level. I was a shoe associate at the time. Okay. I worked in the shoe, and that was back when JCPenney actually had shoes in the back.
I was going to say,
you had to bring them out and actually
I remember that.
Yeah, so customers would come in, ask for a shoe size, and I'd help them put them on their feet. And it was a service mentality that I had no experience doing anything like that before.
Right.
So it was ingrained fairly early on of how to serve customers in a way that I wanted to be memorable to where when they would come back, they'd be like, oh, is Nathan working today? Like, hey, I know Nathan provides the best customer service here. I want Nathan to help me, whether it was in the shoe department or to check them out. That's really what my drive was through my career at JCPenney. So worked up through low-level management, became an actual supervisor, ran the fine jewelry department at one point, which was a very different ballpark, you know, when it comes to customer service. Everything that I did, I found joy in engaging with customers and building those relationships to the point where when I left retail and I went to insurance, I realized, oh, I'm missing that aspect. There wasn't a face-to-face interaction that I had in retail to where constantly engaging with people. I think that's why I fell in love with HR, is because that's all, not all I do, but a good majority of what my day consists of is building relationships with employees, building that trust and cultivating an environment that I would hope that feels inviting and people feel happy coming to work. And so I think I've always gravitated towards roles where customer service, whether that's conversations or processing payroll and making sure people get paid and their benefits, I've always gravitated towards roles that have customer service or some sort of people service, at the core of what that role is.
I like that. You keep using the word service, which I appreciate. I think helping, but you're in retail, you've been in retail and HR, and it really is a service. You see it as serving others, which we'll get into more your faith journey, but it's interesting that you're right. It is, you're serving people to help them, and that is part of the different mindset. If you're a believer, is you're serving people to truly help, not to serve to get something.
Yes.
So tell me a little bit about that. I've had people on where they've shared, it does make a difference how you approach things where truly we're not perfect, but you're trying to help people. Like, how can I help you? Others are, how can I help you in exchange for fill in the blank?
Yes.
So tell me a little, I'm sure you've seen that a lot.
Yeah. So retail, specifically JCPenney. JCPenney had the golden rule mentality built into everything that we did. The original JCPenney store, I think, was actually called the Golden Rule Store.
Wow.
James Cash Penny, I think, actually, that was the name of the original store. So when we went through training, it was all about like, hey, how can you provide service that makes it to where even if we have more expensive prices or we don't have as good of a selection, customers return because of the service. And that's how I think I kind of engage with most of what I do, of what would my expectation be in that scenario if I'm a customer going into the store. Like, how would I want to be treated or valued as as a customer? I think that's a lot of what customer service or these service roles need in terms of being successful. Is like, hey, can you lead with how would I want to be treated in that scenario? A lot of times in my HR role now, I always play, I hate using the word devil's advocate, but I play an employee advocate, because I think a lot of companies handle a lot of scenarios from a company-focused decision-making process without thinking of, wait, how does this actually affect our employees? Makes a difference. So
it does make a difference. I think back when I was at FedEx, I don't know if it was a golden rule, but one of our things was just do the right thing. It doesn't matter what it costs. I mean, there's stories of helicopters delivering packages in the middle of nowhere and different things, and those were rare. But it was always about doing the right thing, because the customer was, at the end of the day, the company has to make money.
Yes.
But you don't have a company if you don't have customers. And so I'm curious, was there an individual or a person that helped you learn this, or did you just pick it up? Is there someone that helped you in your leadership journey?
I can honestly say my dad played a large role in my professional mentality. So my dad was an IT manager at Intel for about 25 years. Anytime I was getting to a new stage in my career, whether it be how to write my resume, how to interact with people that were superior, in terms of level or role, that professional communication really was influenced by how I saw my dad as a leader professionally. Think interview prep, I would interview prep with my dad, before going into an interview myself. And I think that really instilled a sense of professionalism and level of communication that I don't think I would have received through education, through other sources, right? And then a lot of my early relationships with mentors and leaders in the professions I was in really helped drive the path that I was on, at the time. So that's why I was there for 10 years at JCPenney, because it was a good environment for me to learn and build up my own professional skills at the time. So I truly would say I think my dad and then a couple of my early mentors, in my career had kind of shaped the way I carry myself out.
Yeah, it's great. No, everybody has somebody, whether good or bad, that has influenced their leadership, and that's great. It was your dad, and he was able to speak into that and still speaks into that. So that's great. Well, moving on to your faith, how has your faith impacted how you lead, or has it always been part of your life?
The faith aspect, and it's so interesting because working now at MSW is a much different environment than I've ever worked in. Working in corporate America is a much different environment where you don't see as much of these conversations coming out in your day-to-day professional, communication, right? But I feel like I've always at least tried to, whether it be the golden rule or like our commandments, that God lays out of how should we treat other people, whether it be performance conversations that we're having. Yes, those are tough conversations with employees, but how can I do it from a point of integrity and respect and compassion where it doesn't need to be a belittling conversation? Like how can I build up employees whether or not, something is wrong, where they leave that conversation and come out of it with, yes, was it uncomfortable? Yeah, I don't ever want to be in that situation again. But Nathan treated me with respect to now I know how to be better in the future. Growing up, I grew up going to a Catholic church. In junior high, we switched to a non-denominational Christian church in Chandler. Started attending youth groups, and that's really what boosted my faith walk. It wasn't just me going to church every Sunday because I was going with my parents, but I wanted to be, there. That community piece, I think, also fell into like why I sought out jobs that had such a community aspect or like a people aspect, was because of that's where I was getting poured into, was that community aspect. So
that helps. That's good. No, it makes sense, and I think it sounds like faith was a part of your life forever, so to speak, but you owned it later on. And it seems that maybe had more of an impact because then the living it out was like your dad walking possibly through some of those things. This is actually how you live it out.
Yes, yeah. After high school, I became a small group leader at that same church. So from about 2013 to 2023 was leading small groups at the youth center, and spent a lot of my free time at the youth center. We had a after-school program called The Bridge, and it was almost like a YMCA, but at the church. Okay. So students had the opportunity to come do their homework. We had a basketball court, a skate park, so all this stuff. And it was really my outlet to, hey, people poured into me when I was this age. Like, how can I pour it back? And it oftentimes was more of a learning experience for me of like brushing up on communication skills, like how to reach different age groups in terms of communication. You can't communicate with your own age group and convey a message, to someone that's in high school that it's a completely different kind of life stage that you're in. And I think that translated into my professional career of being able to learn different communication styles or understand that, okay, if I have an issue with one employee that's a similar issue, but they're two different life kind of stages, I have to cater to who I'm talking to. The message needs to be the same, but the method in which I communicate has to be different. So,
no, that's good. Yeah, I think one of the challenges when I'm coaching different people is there's an assumption, maybe not assumption, that you can just learn by reading and studying, and that is part of it. But as we both know, the doing and practicing and having exercise, and so working with others, especially with HR, seems like that really shaped you and gave you experience in that after school activities with the kids.
yes.
Because you can almost not practice on them, but you're like having relationships and conversations. And so I think that's a challenge with a lot of leaders is you have to get outside of your comfort zone a bit, is what I'm saying, and practice that. You did touch on something when we talk faith and work, faith and leadership. Let's be specific. What would you say, because you said, a lot of people that I've worked in nonprofits, faith-based ones, I've also worked in corporate a lot. And the idea generally in corporate is you follow the rule book and this is how you hold people accountable. But yet people don't. It's interesting. People don't hold them accountable. And then when you get into a nonprofit, you should follow the rule book, but you don't even more because you want to be nice and give extra grace, which is a big frustration for me, to be honest, at times. And I still coach executives and leaders in secular nonprofit, but also faith-based. How have you worked through that mindset, or how have you developed that working with people to, you can still care and love people and be honest and direct and loving. It's almost being mean when you don't share. It's
the way I almost think about it is kind of the tough love mentality.
Yeah.
Almost like a parent would with their child is like, if someone doesn't know that they're doing something wrong and aren't called out on it, they're going to keep doing that same behavior, right? Or keep falling back into that same pattern. And as leaders, if we don't have those tough conversations, regardless of how you have that conversation, it's not going to change. And it's kind of that mentality of, well, they'll get it eventually, right? And I think in the roles I've been in different environments, I've always tried to come to that spearhead with a mentality of integrity and that respect piece of, hey, if I was the employee and I didn't realize I was missing the mark, I would want my manager to tell me, hey, you didn't meet my expectations, here's why, and then here's what I expect going forward. Then I can change my behavior. And that's up to me to, to make those changes personally. But as leaders, if we can't have those tough conversations in a effective way, it's counterintuitive to the whole process, right?
It is.
So I think a lot of leadership teams know what the outcome that they desire, but just don't have the toolkit to know how to have those tough conversations.
Yeah. And I think I agree with you. And I would say I don't blame leaders so much at all, because I think the challenge is many leaders haven't been taught that. You were taught this by your dad and others that spoke. I was taught by leaders that I trusted, and FedEx University and leadership took me through this. That's not the norm anymore. And a lot of people are missing that. And I think we're seeing that lived out more. I think that's why coaching is important for people we work with. It's helping them have the tools and resources to not just do their job well, but to have a baseline. I think the baseline's missing. That was a long story too. I think the baseline's missing.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to convince you, but that seems to be where I'm at on that.
And I think what's tough is, especially from an HR standpoint, HR is the one person in the building that typically is the most disliked. And for the longest time,
I'm sorry about that.
No, and it's like
you're not the most disliked.
At first, I actually struggled with that a lot.
Okay.
When I first started in HR, I was like, oh, this is uncomfortable. Like, I'm the one that has to deliver performance reviews. I'm the one that has to have the termination conversations. I'm the one that has to have those tough conversations that most people don't want to have. And I think the thing that helped me was coming to those conversations from a foundation of my faith, of what does the Bible say about how to treat people? And if I can have those tough conversations with humility and with respect and with love, regardless of what the outcome is, I would hope that an employee would leave whatever that conversation is and feel respected. I think that's to the core of what I do and how I do, kind of my job. I would hope that people leave my office and be like, at least Nathan handled that conversation well. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So.
No, and I think, touching on that, I know people do, but I think in general, with good HR and good leadership, the hard conversations have to happen in order for everybody to move forward, the leader to move forward as well as the employee. But it is how you handle it, how you communicate, and actually having the conversation versus avoiding it and hoping time will pass and it will get better. That has never gone well for me. And so, speaking of not going well, what's one of the hardest leadership lessons you've learned?
I think communication has been one of the things very early on I learned. And the reason why I had brought up the kind of, I would hope a manager would tell me that I'm underperforming or missing the mark. Because I was in that scenario where I thought I was doing very well. And I thought, I was following expectations that I had heard. And throughout that scenario, I learned very quickly I should make sure in those pivotal moments or moments that have a really heavy outcome to make sure I understand the ask. When having that conversation with my manager of hey, I need you to do this, this, and this. If there is even an inkling of, wait, I don't know if I fully grasp what they want, of being comfortable to ask for more clarification. So that communication piece, I think, was something I had to learn very quickly early on in my professional career, was ask more questions, but in a way that is not disrespectful.
That's fair.
In a way that comes across as, hey, I just want to make sure we both get to the end point, and we're both happy with that outcome.
No, that's good. I think, like you said, communication and building trust allows you to ask those questions more, to be able to not push back, but to dig in a little bit in clarification. What are you actually asking me to do here? And again, that's part of that follow-up for leadership, is getting clarification. Otherwise, you could be going in a different direction, presenting information to that leader or manager, and they're like, what are you talking about? And that's never happened to you. But that's happened to me, where I think I hear something, I really could swear that that's what they're asking me to do. And I've learned to ask those clarifying questions because I've wasted so much time on stuff.
Yeah. And then it's frustrating for everyone. It's frustrating for, from in my point of view, because then I feel like I've wasted time and I've then fallen short of what that expectation is. But also from the management standpoint of wait, there's that doubt then of is this the right person for what I'm doing? Then there just becomes that uncertainty of was I wrong in giving the communication? So
no, that's fair. Well, this next question kind of ties to leadership and HR. You could tie it into anything. What do you see as you work with people? What are leaders most commonly getting wrong today? Some common mistakes that you see.
I hate to sound like a broken record, but I do think it is setting clear expectations. I think even with not just from a leader to an employee, but setting expectations within a leadership team, setting expectations within the executive team of, hey, let's set clear expectations so everyone's on the same board. That way employees aren't getting different information from you than they are from me. If I'm having a conversation with one department, I would hope that if someone goes to you, that they would get that same information. I think having those clear the communication channels of, hey, here's what our expectations are. How do we funnel that down to employees to where it makes sense and we build that trust? If you don't have that clear communication, all the other pieces kind of they won't align.
Yep.
You won't build that trust with your team. You won't build the efficiency or productivity if your team doesn't know what you're expecting. It's going to take longer for them to get to where you need them to be. And I think that all kind of trickles down to, is the communication effective and professional? I truly think that's where I've seen there be a lot of struggle with team dynamics and growth and success, is boiling it down to communication.
No, it makes sense. I think one of our 6 leadership fundamentals, the first one is communicate with clarity. Mm-hmm. I always tell people, start with that. If you can clearly communicate, and you both ways, it really alleviates a lot of trouble. So you mentioned clear expectations. So why does that not happen? What have you seen? So if somebody's listening and they're a new leader, you're like, well, I think I'm being clear. I think I'm setting clear expectations. How would you dive into that or dig in a little bit more with them?
One of the things I was always taught in terms of a key element of the communication piece is understanding. Like, if I communicate my wishes to you, there should be some level of, hey, let's recap. Like, are we on the same page after a meeting? You and I sit down for a 30-minute meeting. We go through all our list of, deliverables or tasks that need to be done. And having some sort of recap at the end of, like, hey, okay, so just a recap. Yeah. We both understand what the next objectives are or what our timeline is. I think leaders that I've been around where this may be a struggle is understanding that not all team members communicate the same way. Correct. Or perceive information the same way. You had us go through the working genius, and that was the first time I had been exposed to that. But then understanding, like, okay, this is why maybe some of the information isn't getting all the way through. There's some sort of filter inadvertently there that I need to be aware of when talking to 10 different people, that, okay, I need to cater somewhat to their style of, understanding. Yeah. Now, that's also on the employee to understand, okay, if my manager communicates a much different way than I'm used to, it should be on them to clarify what they need to make sure that they understand, the deliverable.
Agreed. Yeah.
So.
No, that makes sense. And I appreciate you saying that, because if I'm hearing you correctly, it's not just on the leader.
No.
It's on the employee. And I think that's a challenge. A lot of leaders that I work with think that they have to get it all right and know it all. And not know it all as in everything, but as in getting the right, if they do these steps, this will happen. Yeah. And some of that's true, but a lot of it is, but it is a team. You do have other people that have to communicate with you. And at the end of that recap, if a leader says, are we on the same page? And the answer is yes. That's usually not a good answer. It's a good answer. It's not bad. It's better than no. But you need to, there needs to be dialogue. I think that's the point. It's not another 30-minute meeting, for example. But I think it does help to have that dialogue of, so what are your deliverables? What are your timeframes? I like to get into the specifics. I tell leaders, you need to lead, but then they have to lead themselves. But the only way they can lead themselves is if they know clearly where they're going and what they need. Otherwise, you're going to start micromanaging them.
Yes. I learned that very quickly when I was in school. So my background is not business admin. It's not.
That's not. That's right. Yeah. Tell me about that. Yeah.
My education background is actually physical therapy. I was my bachelor's is in exercise wellness from ASU, and then I was halfway through my physical therapy program when COVID struck and kind of turned my whole plan upside down. Yeah. But I learned while I was in school that for me, the best way to make sure I truly understand a concept or, any information is, can I teach it to someone else? And I've kind of used that in some of my leadership communication ways of, if I'm telling someone new information, to make sure that they understand it, recite it back to me. Yep. Like if you can tell me the concept back, I know that you understand it. Exactly. You're not just reciting what I read or what was on a presentation slide.
Yep.
If you can give me that information back, I then know you truly understand what we've discussed.
That's right.
That piece I think is missing. I think leaders just jump to, okay, I'm gonna dump the information to you, take it and go do what I need you to do, versus giving the employee the tools that they need to be successful.
No, that's good. And I just want to highlight for everybody that's watching, if you jump on our website, faithdrivenleadership.co, there's a newsletter you can sign up for. We give out monthly updates for things like this, resources. And I think that's probably one of a very useful thing is we provide toolkits for people. And in it has at the end how to teach it, how to use it. Because it is one thing to read it and just be like, hey, let me learn this for myself. But hopefully you can, the assumption ladder or whatever. You can learn how to use the assumption ladder, but then you should teach it to somebody, even if it's anybody. It doesn't matter. It really does make it sink in, and then you actually use it more. So that's good. Well, on the leadership thing, I think one last question for you. What do you think is one question every leader should ask themselves more?
I think continual growth. Like how can I continue to be better? If as a leader you're not pushing yourself to elevate, how can we expect our teams to continue to grow and excel?
That's true.
In a way that fosters performance growth, success, whether you're in a a revenue-based environment, you can't be stagnant. So that top-down leadership has to come from you as a mentor, as that kind of guide light. You have to be continually improving. I think that's one thing that I when I took over HR was understanding that HR is a field that's constantly evolving from a compliance standpoint, from a legal standpoint, best practices, that I have to constantly be pulling in information. And it only benefits everyone else, right? If I constantly am learning and bettering myself, I would hope that kind of trickles down effectively to other people. So
that's good. No, I totally agree. And I think that is part of the continuous development. Otherwise, we're going to get past, right? And so you opened the door. So question for you, what are you currently learning or growing or kind of what's stretching your leadership today?
So one of the things that I've really been relying on is other experts. Okay. So in my role, leaning on other HR professionals to network, talking to other HR professionals, relying on resources, whether it be compliance stuff, help guides, recruiting guides. Recruiting is a whole nother realm right now with AI and, all the different websites and how can I be effective when utilizing those resources. I think constantly staying up to date on the technology piece too. Like that's ever changing, not just the AI piece, but like what resources are out there to make my life easier, but also to be a good steward of the resources that I use. I would hate to have all these tools at my disposal and then not be using them, to the best of their ability. So
no, it's good. Yeah, resourcing is good and continuous learning. So if you're continuously learning and passing the baton, if you could give advice to your younger self, what would you tell yourself?
Network more.
Okay.
I truly feel that the best opportunities that come up are through pathways that you may not have expected. Yeah. Most of the jobs that I've been in have not been from me applying. They've been from networking, speaking to other people, and gaining those resources. And this is not yes, LinkedIn is so powerful, but building those personal connections and real life connections, I think are key. In a environment where everything is now digital and a lot of our communication ends up being over a screen. I think having those in-person, real-life connections and relationships can be pretty pivotal. And that's something my dad had always told me, but I don't think I really started having that mentality until I was a little bit older and needed those connections.
No, I appreciate your answer. I agree. I guess my question would be, somebody's listening and they're trying to network, but they're in just their own world in a sense, they're struggling with that. Any thoughts on how to network well? Because I could see people going crazy and just plugging into network groups, and it's quantity over quality, but that's not what you're saying.
No.
So explain to us, like, where would you recommend?
I think realistically, it's the opposite.
Okay.
I think quality relationships are actually a better use of your time. So something I had to do is put myself in uncomfortable scenarios. Not uncomfortable in terms of, oh, I shouldn't be doing this, but going out of my comfort zone. Having conversations with people in environments that I probably wouldn't be. Having conversations, a lot of the times being vulnerable and talking about like my professional career or talking about, my faith journey has gotten me connected to people that I don't think I ever would have if I hadn't opened up, on that personal level. So I think put yourself in positions that open new opportunities that otherwise, if you're pretty close-minded and nope, I like my group that I'm in, I don't like having uncomfortable conversations. I think that really narrows or locks you into a box.
No, it does stretch us and grow us. And if you're too comfortable, you probably are stuck. I think that's my thing. I've been stuck, and I like talking to people, but not new people, so much. And so, but I have to get out there because I find so many people that I meet when I start a conversation or am in those positions, I learn so much because I didn't know anything about them. Yeah. And it just opens that world up. Yeah. So I can appreciate that. Any thoughts on? You mentioned, I'll fast rewind to when we first started, you were speaking into students' lives and doing things like that. I know you're helping different people with HR. So how are you passing on your information now?
I think making sure that the tools are easy to understand and easy to implement. If I info dump a bunch of resources to someone, it's not useful unless they truly know how to implement that into their situation. So I think from my point would be like understanding someone's scenario. Like if you're in one environment, the toolkit that I give to someone is not going to be the same as a sales environment. But the tool should be easy to implement, easy to understand, and easy to replicate. I think so. Foundational level, I think skill sets and resources are pretty helpful. And again, continually putting information in front of you that just betters your own knowledge, I think is really, really important.
No, I appreciate that. I would just say, so many people love to say, oh, I've got the book for you, or I've got a podcast for you. They haven't really listened. They just have resources to share. It kind of encompasses everything you've shared, a lot of what you share, which is the clear communication, understanding what people actually need. It doesn't take hours to figure that out. Yeah. It's a simple conversation, understanding. And sometimes it's like, I don't have a resource, but I know somebody. Oh, you have an HR question? Talk to Nathan. Oh, you have a child protection, child safety? Talk to Heather. Yes, yeah. And so it's knowing that's part of the networking of that's the joy as well, is passing on those people. I think that is part of the joy.
Oh, that is such a fun conversation to have. Of, hey, I can't help you, but I know someone that can.
Exactly. Yeah, I just think encourage the leaders who are watching or listening today. It really isn't, the joke. It's not what you know or who you know. It's what you know, who you know. It's the same. It's knowing the resources, the networks, who to connect people to, in a caring way, not to get people off your back, but in a caring way. Yeah. And so again, that's all tied to our faith, which is we do want to help but sometimes we can't. And that's okay. But we can maybe help you to get to somebody else who can help and not take it on myself. I'm not going to all of a sudden learn HR at the level you know it just because someone needs HR help.
Yes.
It's much better to introduce you to them.
Well, and I think, honestly, if someone had the humility to tell me, hey, I actually don't know, versus the faking it till you make it, I think most people are smart enough to know, wait, actually, it doesn't sound like you know what you're talking about. Exactly. Like, why waste, both of our times to only find out that you don't have the knowledge that probably is needed to solve that issue?
Agreed, and you just said it. You're wasting both persons' time. Yeah, no, that's good. Well, I'm going to do a couple rapid fire questions here for you. Just favorite leadership book?
There's a book about a company called Menlo. Oh gosh. The company's name is Menlo, but the way that they build their culture starts with how they recruit. That book has really shaped my mentality when it comes to the ideal environment starts with the first step. How do you recruit? How is the onboarding process? If you set up an employee to not have a good initial experience, you are setting the tone for their whole tenure at that company. So that book is something that I've pulled a lot of information out of, that I've used pretty regularly.
We'll put that in the show notes for people. I think it's great. You're right. Setting that expectation and that level at the front makes a huge difference. Whether people feel like, do they know what they're doing here, or am I just the afterthought?
The book is called Joy Inc. And it centers around how Menlo has really changed the recruiting process and mentality of getting quality hires with the hope that it would build a better environment. So
I like it. I'll have to read it.
Yeah.
Best advice you ever received?
Never to burn bridges. That kind of ties into that networking kind of mentality. But my dad has always told me never to leave a job as much as I can control on a bad note. There's been times where I left JCPenney, thought I was moving on to better, a better career for me, didn't pan out. And if I had burned that bridge, there's no way I would have been able to go back as quickly as I did. So I always tell that to most candidates now is make sure you do not burn bridges with relationships.
Well, on the other side of that coin, what's the worst advice you've ever received?
I think the worst advice would be to only focus on me. And I agree with that to a certain point. I think I struggled very early on in my career of worrying about, wait, how does this affect everyone else? And not prioritizing my own kind of success. But I think it can sometimes be taken to the extreme to where I think that's where the whole quiet quitting thing kind of, starts of, well, it only affects me. If you have that mentality, I think it has a domino effect of, okay, what else is actually going on that's causing you to kind of go to that extreme? So I had heard that a lot, and a little bit I agree with, but in the context that I think most people use that, it is not beneficial.
Not beneficial. Well, how about one resource every leader should know about?
I would, from an HR standpoint, I think any HR professional, the one thing that I've used so much is compliance resourcing. We have access to a network called Mineral that supplies any sort of compliance help guides, one-on-one kind of service. That's something that, you may not be able to get access to Mineral, but some sort of HR resource guide. I can't know everything about every single aspect of HR, and I don't think that most people should. But what do you have in your back pocket to reference, when you're in a scenario that you don't know the answer? And how to be prepared to do it quickly.
No, it ties into what you said earlier. It's a constant changing world. And so you can't keep up. I mean, one person could, but that's all they're doing. They're not actually doing other stuff. So, it's great. One word that defines great leadership to you?
Consistency.
Good.
Can you be consistent no matter what scenario, what employee you're talking to?
Yeah.
It's your favorite employee. Not that we should ever play favorites, but if it's
you mean.
let's say your top performing employee versus an underperforming employee. Do I handle situations consistent no matter who it involves?
It does say a lot about a person, doesn't it?
I would hope it does.
No, but that consistency, right?
Yes,
If they're
yeah.
not you would hope it says a lot.
Yeah.
And
I was going to say integrity, but I think the consistency piece
No, I like
pulls
that.
the integrity
It
piece
does.
into it.
that's valid. Favorite productivity habit?
Realistic goals. I think, and you've seen in my office, I have this little Perdomo timer.
Yeah.
And being realistic with myself of, hey, what is my capacity? And what can I give to others in terms of, am I going to be able to give 100% of my attention if I'm not being structured with my
Yeah.
time? And setting realistic expectations and guidelines for myself.
No, it's good. Yep. Most underrated leadership skill?
I think the ability to say you don't know the answer. I think in terms of building trust in an employee environment,
Yeah.
to be able to say, hey, I actually don't know the answer, but let me research it, or let me go find out who does and get back to you. I think if you are constantly saying, oh, yep, this is the answer, and it ends up being wrong, you've completely undermined your credibility. So I think being able to know how to say I don't know the answer or to say no is very undervalued.
It is. A lot of these things you've touched on are skills or habits that people develop over time. I think that's the thing. You didn't just one day grow up with these things and you woke up and it's a process, and that's part of what coaching does, working with people as you work with organizations, specifically more HR. I do want to go one little direction off of the HR, and speaking of leadership skills, conflict resolution.
Oh, my favorite.
Okay.
I love conflict resolution.
You love conflict or conflict? No, you love conflict resolution. So just give us a little bit. I know all leaders deal with conflict resolution.
Yeah.
Well, actually, that's not true. I'll take that back. A lot of leaders don't deal with it, and that's a problem.
They're faced with it, but they don't actually handle it
So
themselves.
talk a little bit about that. Would just anywhere you want to go. You have open mic, obviously, with this. I work with a lot of people where conflict resolution, they just don't know where to start, and that is a coaching journey in itself.
Yeah.
Thoughts you can give people today that they could use and or consider, just food for thought for that.
My first response is always don't rush, or don't react based off of emotion.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of times leaders tend to get one piece of information and that's what they react on. There's one scenario or one event that an employee does and the leadership team reacts or makes a decision based on one fact, right? Without having a conversation, without getting all the facts and understanding, okay, what is actually going on? When I worked in retail, attendance was like the biggest issue for whatever reason. And part of it, I think, was we had a much younger employee base. A lot of students, it's their first job. They don't have the professional maturity to understand, hey, like, I should be showing up on time, that whole thing. That was always the one thing that, like, if someone was late, managers tended to, like, go to the extreme of, okay, we need to write them up, which we need to hold teams accountable. There's a difference between holding teams accountable and doing it correctly. Of, hey, do we know all the facts? There was times where there was an underlying issue of the reason why someone isn't performing. And if you can't have that conversation to understand and listen, sometimes the way that you handle that conflict can be counterproductive to what you really want the end goal. So I mean, don't rush. Don't do things off of emotion. You have to be strategic when handling conflict, whether that be having honest conversations, game planning, and understanding what to do in certain scenarios. Prep plays a lot of role into what I do, now, of giving our leaders guides of, hey, if there's a performance issue, this is how we're all going to handle these scenarios. If there's an issue that's a one-off, it can't just be handled with, I think this is the best way to do it, let's just do it right away. You have to be not cautious, but you have to do things with integrity.
No, I appreciate it. What I've heard you say is all slow down.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it almost usually causes more trouble if you don't slow down in conflict resolution. Yeah. I do appreciate what you said. One of my challenges when I was a new leader at FedEx was, because I was new, I assumed when the similar thing happened with somebody else, I just needed to react the same way and deal with it. And it doesn't work. Different people, different personalities, different situations. And I made a lot of assumptions. I think that was my key. Do you find that for conflict resolution? A lot of people are assuming that it worked in this situation with Jonathan, so now that I'm working with Nathan, man, they almost escalate it because they don't compute that it's two different people.
Yes, I think most leaders that don't have experience handling conflict resolution think it's like this cookie cutter formula. Just because one employee did something similar does not mean that the reason was the same, does not mean that the outcome or the way that you handle it needs to be Now, there's a difference between being fair and consistent and being reactive to foster the best result, right? That's kind of what my role is as HR, is to make sure that from a company standpoint, we're doing things consistently. I would hate for one manager to handle a performance issue completely different than what we're giving, another employee, and that's kind of what my role is. But from a leadership standpoint, there needs to be some sort of variables that are adjusted based on that scenario. It's not conflict is not black and white. It just can't be.
Yeah. No, I hear you. No, this is very good. Well, last word from you. If our listeners remembered only one thing from today's conversation, what would you want them to get out of it?
I think learn to communicate and learn to treat people how you would truly want to be treated in scenarios. I think if I had that mentality when I started my career, I think I would have not elevated quicker, but I would have avoided a lot of stress early on in my career from knowing how to communicate effectively and professionally, and knowing how to ask the right questions, how to treat people, in a work environment, no matter if you're a leader, a supervisor, an exec, treating people with respect and humility. And that comes from our faith. I mean, that's what it's rooted in, is how do we treat people, whether you're in the workplace or out in public. I mean, that it shouldn't matter. That should be the foundation of who we are and how we, conduct ourselves. So,
well, thank you so much for being on today, and it's been great having you. I've learned a few more things about you, leadership. I just want to encourage everyone that's watching or listening to this to reach out to Nathan. His information will be in the show notes. The link to his page, coaching page on our website is there. If you're looking for HR help, looking for resources, coaching in HR, conflict resolution, that is really one of his specialties, conflict resolution. How to walk with you as a leader or your team through conflict, providing those resources is not just what he can do, it is a passion of his. And so at Faith Driven Leadership, we really do want to provide resources and help people become better leaders, become better, I use the word human beings. I think that's part of it. We all want to work well together. That's the base case. So if today's conversation encouraged you, please subscribe, hit like, and share with somebody that might benefit from this. Specifically, if they have HR questions or could use HR help, please share it with them. And again, sign up for our newsletter for monthly updates as well as leadership tips and things like that. And again, I hope to see you on the next episode. And just remember, where we come from, we want everybody to lead with clarity, grow with purpose, and change what really matters. And that takes intentionality. So until next time, have a great day.